Hello everyone, how's it going? So today we have a all Corvette episode, which I'm pretty psyched for. Now starting off, I want to talk a little bit about my car. Now some things have happened since you last saw me. If you follow me on Facebook, you would see that. So courtesy of my friends at TSP, which is Texas Speed and Performance, I'm now running a full exhaust system. Now before I had the B&B Route 66 exhaust, I got a sound clip on a couple days ago, so you'll probably be able to see that if you haven't already. But I have ordered some full 1 7/8 long tube headers as well as a high performance X pipe, which are now on the car. Now I'm not so sure if the mic will be able to pick it up, but it's properly loud. I mean, it sounds really, really good. Now I haven't tuned it yet, so it's running a little rich right now, which anyone around me would definitely smell. But I'm super happy with it. It just sounds fantastic. Corvettes are just too quiet from the factory, and now it sounds the way it really should. I'm missing a cam, of course. A cam would help, but that's later on. So anyways, today I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences in all the Corvettes that there are, all the different generations, which I think is the best one, and a couple extra things all about it. So starting off, when we look at Corvettes, it's really simple. When you look at the different generations, it's not like Porsche or BMW where they have 997, 991, E46, E92, F10, whatever. It's just C1 through C7, 1 being the first, 7 being the most recent. So it's very, very simple to do. Now I'm going to start off with telling you the different generations and the years are, because that's the hardest part to memorize. So we started in 1953 with the C1, which is our first Corvette. It goes from 53 up to 1962. Then we have our C2, which goes from 63 until 67. Then we have our C3, which goes from 1968 all the way until 1982. Then there's a gap for 1 year. We have our C4 from 1984 until 1996. 1997 until 2004 is the C5. Then C6, which is this one here, is from 2005 up to 2013. And then 2014 on is our C7, which we're in the current generation now. So starting with the C1, 1953. That's the first Corvette that was ever brought about to America. Well, it started in America. It originated, I guess it wasn't getting brought to. There's a really nice Rolls Royce over there. Jeez. That sounds seriously good. So C1. Now, the C1, like I said, was the first generation Corvette, and because of that, there, of course, is that collector value to the car. If you're buying a C1, I'm assuming you're probably a collector and you're not going to drive the car so often. The same thing I would say for the C2 as well, because they made them in those few amounts and they're so special now and you can't find them anywhere. So because of that, the prices have also been jacked up a lot. Now, a couple cool things with the C1. It was the only time that the Corvette was ever available with something other than a big V8 up front. You could get an i6 for the first 2 years. After that, they dropped the engine. But if for some reason you don't want a V8, maybe you think that has some collector appeal to it. It might. I'm not really sure. That might be something to look at. Another thing is it was the only time we ever had an all convertible Corvette. It was no coupes at all at the time. There was a hardtop you could buy, which some people like the hardtop, but some people don't like convertibles. But that was the only time we ever saw that we had an all convertible Corvette. Now, after that, we have our C2, which is the start of the coupes, and the first time we ever see the Stingray name being used in the Corvette's life cycle. Now, the C2s are my personal favorite of all the Corvette generations. I think they look the best. Now, we have 1963 till 67, which means it was actually the shortest running time. It's just 4 years. However, in those 4 years, they did make more than they did of the C1. So, how many are left now? That's anybody's guess. But they are really, really cool. Now, a couple things to look for. 1963, the first year, that's the one that you want to buy. That is when you get the split window coupe, which we still talk about today. They look gorgeous. They really do. Now, it's not the best for actually driving, which is why I think 50 years later, we still have not seen another split window Corvette. Because when you look behind you, it makes it a little annoying if there's a gigantic pillar right in the middle of your vision. But it looks really, really cool. And you see a lot of guys who have other C2s, which are a little older, and they just kind of added the little window in the middle, their little bar in the middle, so they have a split window car, because they just look really cool. And because of that, of course, they're highly collectible. That being said, that's what I would definitely look for. However, this is kind of funny because in this generation, the convertibles actually outsold the coupes. which is interesting. Usually it doesn't go that way, but for the C2, that is what happens. So that just adds to the desirability of a coupe right now, especially, like I said, if you have that split window. Those are just going through the roofs in the pricing right now. High desirable, highly collectible. Like I said, I probably wouldn't be driving a C2 on the street. It just seems like a risky move. If some guy in a Civic just hits you because, he thinks, oh, let's do a burnout, I want to, see what you want to do. That's a real shame to do. And they do look, beautiful. Now, the Stingray name will be brought back and continued on for the C3 and then brought back again for the C7. But let's move on to the C3. So, the C3 was a very long-running generation. And we have still the Stingray name, but it really looks nothing like the Stingray from the C2s. The C3, along with the C4, is my least favorite of all the generations. Now, I gotta say, a C3 is probably drivable. That's something you could still drive. It doesn't really have any collector value to it, so I don't think you'd have to watch. I do see quite a lot of C3s on the street, but I don't personally think they look so good. Now, the also problem we also have in the 70s, stricter fuel requirements, catalytic converters, and because of that, we had huge engines making, zero power. So this was kind of the black sheep of all the generations of the Corvette, I believe, anyways. A couple cool things, though. The C3 was the first time we saw the targa roof, or the removable roof, on the Corvettes. And that is what helped kind of bring the coupe numbers higher up. During the C3 generation, we see the coupes outsold the convertibles again. And I think this removable roof has a big thing to do with that, and is still being used today, and is a big factor of people who like Corvettes, is they love that removable roof. Other than that, the C3, there's not so much there. I think they're kind of looking. Some people might like them. Good thing for you because they're all not that expensive, so that kind of makes it a good bargain for you. But then we have our C4. The C4, I believe, is the first of the modern Corvettes. If you look at a C7, you can see the resemblance to a C4. There's especially like a C6 or C5. Anything before that, they don't really have. You see a little bit here and there, but there's not so much. Speaking of C6, there's another one. Hello, friend. He didn't wave back. No Corvette guys ever waved to me. Well, very few they do. I always like, hey, Hello, everyone. I apologize for that. My GoPro decided did not want to stay on the mount anymore. So, anyways, where was I? C4. So, the C4, I believe, is the start of the modern era Corvettes. That being said, not particularly good looking. They're a little boxy. It's 80s. That's what you kind of expect, especially interior. They're really, if you look at them now, it's not great. But the cars of age, I think that's okay. That happens with anything. But this is where we start to see some fast cars. You see the ZR1 name being brought here with the C4, and at that you have, a 108 mile per hour, mid 4 seconds, 0 to 60 car. And that's properly quick. At the same time, they're great bargains. You can get them for, I wouldn't say nothing, but if you look at the power you get from these cars and the price, they're below 10s, and that's a lot of car for the money. And at the end of the day, it still looks like a Corvette. It doesn't look like the best Corvette, but you see that when you can have no badge on the car, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a Corvette. And even today, I still think, depending where you're at, you'll still get some looks in that car. And I said, as far as your value, that's probably just about the best bang for your buck when you can buy. So it's still, like I said, not what I would look for. But depending on your budget, you might be restricted to a C4, and if you are, then there's nothing wrong with that. They are still, then they still are good cars. That being said, I'm happy to move on to our C5. Now, the C5 is the LS era of Corvettes coming in, and this is when they start to become properly quick. Now, this is obviously the only time we have 3 different body styles offered with the Corvette. We have our coupe, we have our convertible, and we have our hardtop. Now, the hardtop was kind of the cheaper option at the beginning, and then the Z06 adopted the hardtop as well. Now, the way it goes is you have your coupe, which is case like mine is. You have this gigantic hatch behind you, which gives you an unreal amount of cargo space. And I think it gives it a really cool, sleek profile. The hardtop doesn't have. The hardtop is more of, I would almost define it as an actual, it's almost like a convertible with a retractable hardtop. Looks like that, basically. You don't have the hatch. You have an actual trunk that's separate. So you lose a lot of trunk space from it, which I don't particularly like. I think the coupes look much better than the hardtops do. That being said, some people might say, no, I like that look more. And if you want to get a Z06, you're limited to that body style. Now, with that hardtop, you also lose the removable roof. There's no Targa removable option like that. So if that's something that you like to your car, you have to say bye-bye to the hardtop because that's not going to work. That being said, the Z06 is, of course, what you want to get. LS6, 405 horsepower, that's a properly quick car. Again, as far as value goes, those have dipped down, and they have so much potential, too. The big thing to look at Corvettes is when you see them, they have a lot of power from the factory. And from the C4 and C5, they start to get, properly quick. And that's just from the factory. These cars are so easy to mod, and they pick up so much power. You put a cam, intake, headers, and, you're well above 100 horsepower what you were at before. And, of course, they have that really, really, really good sound added as well, which is just a huge bonus. And because they're so light, they really don't need so much power anyways just to go fast. That being said, C5s are a great buy. They still look modern-ish. I mean, they have the pop-up headlights, but if you want to get those removed, you can put, a fixed light in there instead. And I think the C5s are a proper car. I was definitely looking at one when I wanted to buy mine. That being said, getting a nice C5 or a pretty good C6, the gap isn't so large, especially if you're going to get a later C5. And I think the extra money to spend is definitely worth it. Now, if you already have a C5, or if you're going to be going from a C4, then I would, maybe you have, well, I'm not sure if it's worth the extra money. But if you don't have one at all, I definitely think it makes sense to get that little extra more and go up to a C6, which is what we're going to talk about right now. So the C6, of course, is what I have. Now, this is the first time we see a fixed headlight since 1962, since the first generation. Everything in between has all had pop-ups. So this is the first time we see a fixed headlight again, which is nice. So we start off with an LS2, 6-liter V8, 400 horsepower, same amount of torque, properly quick. Now, if you were listening just a second ago, I mentioned the Z06 is 405 horsepower, they're LS6. So now we have a base car, which is just barely slower than a Z06. So that's a big value thing if you look at it, especially if you're looking to buy. If you're considering a Z06, you can get a C6 for around the same money, and they're going to be just about as quick. Now, you also have a much more modern looking car. I think C6s even today still look really new. All the time I have people come up to me like, what year is that? And I'm like, oh, it's an 05. And they're like, what? Thought it was like brand new. So a lot of people, I still think because they still look so modern, they don't really realize how old some of them actually are. Now, at the beginning, for the first 2 years, we have an LS2, like I just said. Now, in 2008, we brought an LS3 in there, which is a 6.2-liter V8. You get extra 30 horsepower. If you have an LS2, don't bother upgrading. You won't feel it. If you're just buying one and the price difference isn't much, go for it. You're not going to notice 30 horsepower. We already did with 400. So, if you really, really want to have it, then sure. And it's a little newer, sure. And if you like that, okay. But you don't really need to. You're fine with just getting an LS2. LS2s are still really, really good. That being said, of course, the Z06 or the ZR1 is what you want to look at. Now, the C6 is kind of the generation where they have everything. They have the Grand Sport, they have the Z06, they have the ZR1, and of course the base one as well. Now, with the Grand Sport, that replaces the Z51 package, which if you have a Corvette, you need to get the Z51. It's definitely worth it. Basically, their sport pack. You get shorter gearing, bigger brakes, wider tires, so a couple of nice things that really help. Now, the Grand Sport replaced that. A cool thing with the Grand Sport, too, is you get the wide body from the Z06. Now, I love the wide body look. It looks I would have loved to have a Grand Sport if it was in my budget. They're just a little too expensive. That being said, a Z06 is really, really what you want to have, and this is my personal favorite of the C6 generation. You get an LS7. LS7 is a 7-liter V8, which makes it really cool because it's a 427 as far as cubic inches go, and that kind of has historic value to the Corvette. It also revs to almost 7,000 RPM, so for a pushrod V8, it's very high revving. It's also the lightest of all the Corvettes. You actually have an aluminum frame and then carbon fiber body panels as opposed to a steel frame and then fiberglass. So it makes it also the lightest of all the Corvettes. If you're going to ever go to a track, the Z06 is the one you want to have. Of course, you get that wide body as well. Now, the ZR1 has a lot of those as well. However, the ZR1s are a lot more expensive. Given, the LS9, which is a 6.2-liter V8, but it's supercharged. That car is just a powerhouse. I mean, 640 horsepower. You're looking at, Ferrari Enzo levels of power for under 100 grand. Right now, I think they've already dipped down to the 70s, maybe even 60s. So if you have, a bigger budget, but you're still limited a little bit, I wouldn't say 60,000 is a small budget, but relative to some other cars, that's really not so much, and you get, a huge amount of power for it. So that being said, I still like the Z06 a little more, just because I think it's a little more usable. I think 640 horsepower is a tad much for the street. And of course the price, Z06 can be had for just about half the price. They came out in 06 versus the ZR1, which came out a little bit later, so they've depreciated a little bit more. And they've also, of course, cost a lot less at the beginning, so that kind of helps as well. That being said, if power is what you're looking for, the ZR1 is your place to be. But of course, you do lose the removable roof. With the Z06, it was the ZR1. You don't have the roof that comes off, which for some people is a big thing. So, me personally, I really love it. So, it's a cool thing for me to have. And that being said, of course, you can take a base car like this. I'm running about 450 horsepower at this time, and that was just a header. That was just a full exhaust, and that's all it took. So, it's easy to add power to these cars, and you can be, if you really want, you could twin turbo, supercharge it, and you'll be running well above a ZR1 anyways at that time, and spend a lot less. That being said, it's not quite the same thing, of course, and having that ZR1 badge is pretty sweet, I'll definitely say. That being said, let's finish up with our C7s. So C7 is the most recent generation. Now, the C7s are, I said the C2 was my favorite, but that's as far as the classical ones. As far as the new ones, the C7 is, you just can't beat it. It's properly cool. Couple things to look for. The Z51 package, again, is what you want to have. The Z51 cars, while being a little better to drive, also that helps when you want to resell the car. Resale value does help having a Z51 package option in it. That's when I was looking for my car. The Z51s were kind of a huge thing to always mention in the ad. Oh, Z51 package. So it's a cool thing to have. Now, this goes with the C7 as well as the C6 if you are planning on getting an automatic one, which you shouldn't, but you probably will because every single Corvette for sale is an automatic. It is seriously hard to find a manual one. If you are looking for an automatic, be careful on getting the first year of the generation. Chevy kind of does this thing, which really annoys me. So when the C6 came out in 2005, 2004 as an 05 model here, it had a 4-speed automatic. So we have a brand new Corvette, all new, and they give it an old 4-speed. The year after, they give it a 6-speed automatic with paddle shifters. And they did the same thing with the C7. In 2014, they have their 6-speed automatic. The year after, they brought out their all-new 8-speed, which I think is messed up to kind of screw your early adopters of the car, The car just came out, they all want to jump out and buy it. And then the year after, it's, let's get this much better gearbox out there. Maybe it's their way of punishing you for getting an automatic, I'm not sure. But I think it's kind of a marketing thing, so they have their, all-new Corvette. And then the next year, all-new transmission. So it kind of keeps it in the news. That being said, I think it's a little annoying. However, you should get a manual anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter so much. Now, C7s, we have our ZR6 back. However, no ZR1 as of yet. That being said, a Z06 now has more power than the ZR1 did before, so I think it's unlikely that we'll see the ZR1. I think they kind of just incorporated them into one model. However, we now have a Z06 offered as a convertible, as well as a Targa roof. So if you are someone who likes the sun or an automatic, you can now get a Z06 in that. Of course, as always, I recommend the Z06. That's the one to get. However, there have been some reliability things with that engine that haven't been the greatest. Of course, at Motor Trend's best driver's car, it didn't do too good and kind of broke down. So do keep that in mind, of course. That being said, I think we're just about finished. This was a long video, but I figured it would be, and that's okay with me. So that's basically an overview of all the different generations of Corvettes that we have. Now, I will say, as far as buying advice, get what makes you happy. Don't really, forget what I was going to say. We're just ending the video on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like and or favorite button. For more videos of me, please hit subscribe. I don't think I've mentioned this in a video yet. I have finally surpassed 1,000 subscribers. I thank you guys so much for that. It feels so awesome and honored to finally be at a 4-figure number. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I will see you next week.